Hello everybody. So now we're going to talk about how to put on this little decorative strip that actually also acts to strengthen the neck somewhat. I call it the J strip. It doesn't really have, I mean, I guess it's kind of it's my thing. I never saw anything like this. But what it does is it glues to the treble side of the headstock in a very precise way, and then after that it's laminated in between the veneer on the back of the head and also the headstock overlay veneer on the front of the head. So it turns this into a real great beam for stiffness, and I think it really helps. Oh, I know it helps. So the trick now is to figure out how to glue this so that we have plenty of material on both sides when we're all done. So this is a 5-part lamination. I think you can see it pretty clearly. There's a 40 thousandths layer of solid wood on the outside, and then there's a 20 thousandths layer of this kind of beautiful maple veneer, which is pretty bright and looks nice and light colored. Then there's a layer. Now I've used both solid wood, and this is solid sliced veneer right here, and then this is the fiber that we've talked about before that violin makers use for purfling, many of them, not all of them, and it's also used for gilled headstocks and all kinds of other things in instrument making. It's an old product, and in the trade it's referred to as fiber. In the electronics trade they call it fish paper, and it's used as an insulator. Anyway, cool stuff. Maybe we'll do a little riff on fiber. So it's solid ebony veneer or whatever material I choose, and then it's white wood, black something or other, either fiber or wood, and again white and black. So it all adds up to 120 thousandths thick or 3 millimeters thick. As a final refinement, what I like to do is to carefully sand off on the belt sander the thickness of it. So it starts out down here as 5 laminations, and then it ends up at the end with no laminations, or one, well, no laminations, just one piece of ebony or some other material that I might have chosen. Like, let's see, what else is here? Oh, this is lignum vitae, and these are Brazilian rosewood. And I've also used Pernambuco and snakewood, but I don't have any of those to show you. It's sanded like this carefully on the belt sander, put a taper in this, and then it's glued on to a carefully shaped surface that I'll show you how I do this, all right? To make this J thing, first I'll show you the old way. This was my first tool that I did, and you can see in here it has this brass shim stock with clear packing tape on top, and we've talked about packing tape before. It's awesome when you're trying to laminate stuff and keep it from sticking to your tool. It's great, wonderful. And then the other thing is, I didn't like this because I could only get one part out of it at a time, and there was a big mess, and there was waste, and it was hard to keep things. I don't know, I just don't remember this tool fondly. I did that for a while. And then I graduated to making a much wider piece, which I can't show you, but it was this, I don't know, 4 inches wide or something like that, where this part is just for bending the 40 thousandths piece of veneer. And you see over here I've got a note that says that 26 volts on the variac is going to be 140 degrees Fahrenheit in this setup. So that means that just the way I like to bend other things, it's wood in the middle, of course, and then a stainless steel shim on each side to keep things pretty, and then on the outside of that a heating blanket on each side, and then all clamped together and the heating blanket applied. To do this part, this kind of bend is so tough that we can't ask the heating blanket to do it. We have to pre-bend on a bending iron in order to get that to work. Anyway, maybe we'll show that someday, but that's pretty simple. I mean, it's the same kind of bending that we do for guitar sides. And then this tool, everything says J on it. This is gluing the J lamination. So this, we don't need stainless steel and heat. We've got nice tool surfaces here that I created, offhand on the sanders that I have. And inside, if you look here, you'll see that it's offset for this 3 millimeter or 120 thousandths space. Oh, here's one. Wait. So this should be real. Yeah, there it is, real time, right in there. That gives it full pressure everywhere and does a great job sticking it all together. So there we go. Next step is to make sure we like this part, or maybe I'll start a new one and just show you how that works. Oh, look, I've done some of these already. All right, we'll use one of these. Yeah, this is fine. We'll use one of these, and I'll show you how I go about tapering the back surface, and then how to lay it out and cut it on the Douglas fir treble side of the neck. All right. That's J number 1. Here we are at the trusty old Porter cable belt grinder, they call it. This thing is a real workhorse. I can't read but it's probably, 2 horsepower or something, much more than you would need for woodworking. And I made this table because the original iron table was pretty rude and I wanted a bigger surface. I also wanted to be able to not care about it so much because every time I put a fresh belt on, I take a little cut on the table, and it's just done that here, which means that there's just about no gap between the belt and the table, which is excellent for here because we're going to take this down to a nice thin dimension, and we wouldn't want it getting stuck in there and getting it taken out of our hand, which the belt sander can be pretty good at doing if you give it a big gap here. So we're going to taper starting about here. I already started on this one and decided that the belt I had was too dull to do the job, so I just changed it. I had to press pretty hard and it was getting pretty hot. But you can see I've cut through one lamination down here, but it was going so rough. Like I said, I knew I couldn't make it work without a brand new belt. So here it is, and it's a 60 grit belt, and it's very nice kind of belt for this work. I'll show you with the mark of a so it actually is a great gluing surface, and you can see by me by me just casually pushing it in there, I didn't press on the right place. I got too high, so it did it. We have plenty of material. I'm going to fix that. But the point is that while we're doing this, we're going to be pressing in the center like this with our fingertip as we do that. So I'll show you how this works. Well, we'll take it back to the bench and measure it. Okay. Doesn't really matter what this shape is too much, just so long as we get down to, and so we're down to 32 thousandths. Down here, probably the end of the guitar is more like 35. So we only lost about 5 thousandths from the original 40 thousandths thickness, if it was that thick. That's what it says on the tool. Looks like it is. First we'll just make sure that this is pretty straight down here. Straight across, I mean. All right, that looks good. And I guess we could do this a little bit. I'm not sure if it's really useful, but there, we did it a little bit. Anyway, enough. This is fine. It's going to glue great. So the next job is to lay it out so that we can cut the headstock to fit it precisely. Oh. Okay. Okay, so here we've located our pattern. And now we have the tricky job of clamping this. So here I'll try and clamp these so that the pencil mark is still barely visible, because it's the inside of this part, of course, that we're going to want to mark. Well, that's looking pretty good. Okay. I know everybody likes different ones. I like these Papermate Sharpwriter things. Number 2 lead. Seem to be working good. Oops. Alright, now if I can just mark this without moving it around, I'll be a hero. Okay. Alright, so that's my final mark. And next we'll go to the bandsaw and see what we can do. All right, so for this cut, I'm using this little clamping guy so that I don't have to worry about putting this down on the table. Obviously, there's a neck shape to get out of the way. So this way I'm going to be able to happily saw down my little line here. Okay. So here goes. So I think it's really important to make wonderful friends with your bandsaw. It's so nice to be able to use them precisely and get a good cut. This is a new blade, so it left a little bit of a, blade residue or something on there. And we're going to just leave it in here and go over to the spindle sander and clean up this end, and then I'll clean up this end by hand. Okay, so here we are. I have this handmade, I don't know, 1 1/4 inch diameter thing with a bunch of 320 paper, spiral wrapped around it. Not particularly sharp down here, but it's okay up here, so maybe it will be working. We'll turn on the oscillations. Oh, vacuum. All right, so whereas it's done an absolutely splendid, near perfect job in here, over here where it's flatter curve, we won't be able to guide it with the precision required to get a smooth arc. No matter how careful I am, I'll induce bumps in here. So I'm going to have to sand this part by hand, but we're This looks fantastic. Let's hope it fits the part. Well, we'll see pretty soon. This has to come out perfect. Well, you can see here that there's the joint between the neck core and the cover, and you can see that there is a little thickness in that joint. That's the epoxy that's in there because there's no carbon in that part of the guitar. Right, the carbon ends right about here. Yeah. All right. Back to the workbench. Okay. So we'll make some marks here. Let's see what we're doing. Start off with a heavy grit. This is 80 to 120. So here we can see the little bumps. There's a bump. I made this a problem. That's probably the worst thing left to chase out is this guy right here. Too bad, but hey, I did it. One of the shops I worked at, full of students, or recently former students, and on the wall was a little saying that went, "Do you love it? Do you hate it? There it is, the way you made it." So we have to do whatever we can in guitar making to make sure that we love what we did. Because after all, that's really where it's at. That's where it's really at. So I'm back here working on this blunder. Actually, this will never be seen, but that's why I just quoted that line from the shop wall, because I hate it, and I'm going to make it go away. Oh, I should point out that this is a piece of Kydex plastic, which is really convenient to use for things like this. Okay, so we would be remiss if we didn't make sure that we hadn't made a mistake. By blowing it away side to side, you know what I mean? It looks like there's a little mistake right in here, so I'm going to take this part of the scraper that's got just a little curve to it. And then we'll shift down to 220 paper. Hold it down nice and tight. Okay, well that problem's gone. Let me go a little up here. All right, looks great. Now finally, Feels nice and fair. I like it. Okay? So now, we'll see if what we did has anything to do with the part that we started out with. Oh, that's pretty close. It's pretty good, really. Try a clamp on this direction. Can't clamp too hard here because I want to crush the neck. Okay. I'll have to make a tiny little correction in this. I don't think I can show you this. There's a tiny little bit of light coming through it. I don't even know if we would be able to see it. In the finished part, but I can see light through it. You know, light can sneak through some pretty small spaces. And it looks like it's a tiny bit tight. Oh, I can see it. It's a tiny bit tight over here. So in other words, some material has to come off just the end of this, which is really the worst thing that you would have to do, because we're working right off an edge. So I might use a file for this. And some magnification. Aren't I supposed to be making this look easy? Isn't that my job here? So part of this cutting and fitting thing is training yourself to remember these little bumps and hollows when you look at them. Really take a good movie. Because it's really hard to mark these things. Super hard. All right, well that looks pretty ready to glue. I'm liking it. We're only going to see this silly thing from here to here, but that's the hardest part to fit, so important to do a good job. Anyway, next time I'll be sticking this thing on, and we will proceed. So now just a quick glue up here for this J-strip. Got some clamps on here, enough to make me feel good that we don't have any gaps. We're gonna put some epoxy in there and make short work of this one. I'll just mix up 5 grams of resin and a gram of hardener, if I can figure out how to do that. It's nice to have a scale that goes to the 1/10 of a gram. It helps you use, okay, so there's 5. 6.1, that's fine. So we had 1.1 instead of the one we were looking for. It's reasonably tolerant of mixture variation. I don't want to get too far off that. And in small quantities, it's really important that you make sure you really blend them both together so you don't get glue failure. Again, normally I would have a fan blowing across me, but since I'm talking to you, I'll try and minimize that. Plus, this is just a few moments of exposures. On this job, we're going to paint both parts. I hardly need any on this surface because it's so low porosity, but this is a pretty porous surface. We are going to want to make sure that we have enough resin in here to get a good joint. So, all right, so that's enough mixing, I think. Look at that pretty wood. Beautiful Doug fir. This is a fairly soft, light piece of material. Not sure how many species there are that are called Douglas fir. I thought it was 6, but somebody wrote me in comments that it was 3. I'm probably right. What do I know? But it does vary widely. I mean, this was actually an easy one to work with because the grain lines are not so different. You know, the spring and the summer wood are not so different. As I think I may have mentioned before, the only place where this joint has to be super perfect, not that there's any place where it's bad, but the only place where it has to be super perfect is at the end here, and then this short jaunt in the highly developed curve here in the corner where the stripes will be exposed as the fancy part of the headstock. There we go. Okay. Turns out these little clamps are pretty darn useful for stuff like this. Just make sure you get it lined up the way you like. All right, well, there it is. Not a lot of drama. And after this, we're going to be able to sand the headstock faces and install the back strap on the guitar, which is drama. All right, so see you next time with that. The back strap is next.